Warp Twin. The Warp Twin is basically a high-performance shortboard version of a twin fin. So the Twinsman deck and rail is like a flatter deck, concave deck, beveled, packs in more foam, a little bit fishier outline. The Warp Twin is definitely foiled more like a shortboard. A little bit more of a dome deck, kind of a traditional high-performance shortboard rail. Winged round pin. That's where the WRP or warp comes from. It kind of originates back in our old Mod Twin model. And the Mod Twin was one of the first boards that I made, first models that I was making years and years ago that was kind of had transitioned over from all the shortboards I used to make early on. And this was kind of like the HP version of that, but freed up and way easier to turn and just way faster. And so it kind of evolved over the years, and initially like Victor has ridden it a bunch, Clay Marzlo's ridden it a bunch. It has a lot going on in the bottom, which is kind of unique for that style of board. It has a pretty deep concave, has a pretty deep spiral V through the fin area, and has a pretty pronounced V in the back little tail section. And so the board feels really dynamic under your feet. It feels very, some boards are neutral feeling, where they kind of just go where, you know, they don't give you a lot of feedback, but the Warp Twin has a lot of feedback to it. So you really feel like when you drive through a turn, the board feels very alive. It feels really dynamic under your feet. It feels like it wants to be surfed hard, like it wants to be pushed, it wants to drive off the bottom, it wants to hit the lip. And so it's a great twin fin transitional board for shortboard guys, for guys that are into that style of surfing, because you don't have to change your approach, you don't have to surf it differently. It's just faster, turns easier, but suits a lot of the same waves too. Like you could surf it, like Clay surfed it at Pipe and all these other places in Hawaii. So that's kind of the basis for the Warp Twin. It's usually an upright twin is the fin that you run with it. The tail area isn't super wide. It's a little bit of a pulled in tail, and actually if you look at the outline, it could almost even look a little bit gunny because it's almost a rounded pintail. So you don't need to overfin it, but like a nice upright is probably the way to go. So size wise, you kind of size it similar to you run a shortboard. So like Clay rides it like 5'11", 5'10", something like that, and his like VBSM shortboard would be like 5'11" or 6'0", something like that. So it's kind of just right underneath where your shortboard would be, and you don't have to go super wide with it. You can kind of keep it within range, like a little bit more of shortboard or hybrid dimensions, almost maybe like what you would ride a Groveler shortboard at. That's how you'd size the Warp Twin. But it also, we do a lot of them as step-ups too. I'll do them as 6'6", 6'7", 6'9" with the Warp Twin, and it operates as a really fun semi-gun for tubes, for like overhead waves, especially guys that are riding fishes and riding Twinsman and kind of riding more alternative boards. The Warp Twin as a step-up is a really great option, because a lot of those guys don't have like what they would call a shortboard, and when the waves are on and you want something that has a little bit more rocker curve and not as wide with a thinner rail, the Warp Twin kind of ticks that box. So I think that's when you see Victor or Clay riding it in good waves, it'll hold, and it'll kind of has a little extra, because it's such a dynamic, lively feel under your feet. You feel a lot of control and a lot of response to it. It's like a heightened kind of response feel with the board, which is pretty fun. Yeah, so this is like Clay's go-to twinny. He's spent so many years riding shortboards, and the first time he'd ever ridden a twin fin really was a board that he borrowed from Asher. And when he started riding for us, we're like, oh, we got to get a twin fin that really resonates with Clay. And so that's what the Warp Twin, that's what it was made for.